Imagine this. It's 1971. A man hijacks a plane, gets a couple $100,000 in cash, and then just jumps out of the plane with a parachute, never to be seen again. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, and it is without a doubt one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries.
So, this guy, he called himself Dan Cooper. He gets on a plane, pulls the whole thing off with this incredible, chilling calm, and then just disappears into a stormy night. And that's it. No body, no real identity, no arrest. He simply became a legend.
You know, this whole thing didn't start with some big, dramatic scene. Not at all. It began quietly, on the eve of Thanksgiving, with a man in a business suit who looked, well, he looked just like any other passenger.
And when you look at the timeline, it's almost deceptively simple for how wild this whole thing was. It all kicks off around 2:45 p.m. Our guy, Dan Cooper, boards a flight from Portland to Seattle. He even orders a bourbon and soda. But then, just after takeoff, that's when he makes his move. And his move? It was a note. He hands it to a flight attendant, and it's almost weirdly polite. It said, "Miss, I have a bomb here and would like you to sit by me." Can you imagine? And to prove he wasn't messing around, he calmly opened his briefcase, revealing a whole mess of wires and red cylinders. The threat was absolutely real. The hijacking was on.
So what did he want? Well, Cooper's demands were super specific. He wanted $200,000 all in $20 bills and 4 parachutes. I mean, with passengers' lives on the line, what could the airline and the FBI do? They had no choice but to comply.
Okay, so he gets the money, he gets the parachutes, the plane's on the ground in Seattle, and he lets all the passengers go. Everything seems okay, right? But then he orders the plane back into the air. The new destination? Mexico City. Except he was never going to make it there.
I mean, let's just stop and think about the conditions for this jump. It's pitch black outside. They're at 10,000 feet. There's freezing rain, a wind chill well below zero. And this guy's about to leap into that wearing nothing more than a business suit and loafers. It's just insane.
And remember how he wanted those small bills? Well, that meant the ransom weighed a staggering 23 pounds. So he ties all that cash to himself, lowers the rear air stairs of the Boeing 727, which was a pretty unique feature on that plane, and just jumps right into the middle of a raging storm. And poof, he was gone. The crew landed safely, but Cooper had completely disappeared. Now, the immediate assumption, right? He must have died in the fall. But that one question, what if he didn't? Well, that's what launched an investigation that would last for decades. So the moment that plane landed without Cooper on board, the FBI launched what would become one of the most extensive and honestly most frustrating investigations in its history. And this is really the core of the frustration with this case. The FBI threw everything they had at it. We're talking one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. Hundreds of agents and soldiers combed the wilderness. They interviewed over 1,000 suspects. And the result? Absolutely nothing. And here's a fun little piece of trivia for you. The name we all know him by, D.B. Cooper, that's not even the one he used. He called himself Dan Cooper. It was actually an early media mistake by a reporter that dubbed him D.B. Cooper, and for whatever reason, that's the name that stuck, becoming a part of American folklore.
So for nearly a decade, the case went completely cold. There wasn't a single piece of physical evidence to suggest what had happened to Cooper after he jumped. And then, in 1980, a stroke of luck. Just $5,800. It was a tiny fraction of the ransom, found in 3 rotting bundles of $20 bills. But here's the kicker. The serial numbers were a perfect match. This was Cooper's money.
But this clue only deepens the mystery. It was found miles from the estimated drop zone, which made it seem like Cooper must have buried it. But later analysis suggested the money probably just washed ashore months after the jump, which, for many, pointed right back to the theory that he didn't make it. So, where does that leave us? With no body and only a handful of disintegrated cash, all that's left are theories. The case officially remains unsolved, which has allowed the legend of D.B. Cooper to just grow and grow. Really, the whole debate boils down to 2 possibilities. First, he died. And the evidence is pretty compelling. The jump conditions were nearly unsurvivable, he apparently chose an inferior parachute, and none of the ransom money ever got spent.
But the second theory, that he survived, is fueled by how meticulously planned the crime was, and that simple, stubborn fact that no body was ever found.
So who was he? This cool, calculated gentleman thief? Or was he an inexperienced amateur making life-threatening mistakes? He chose the worst parachute. He didn't ask for larger bills, which forced him to jump with a 23-pound anchor. His incredibly calm demeanor and his totally reckless actions, they just don't add up. It's a paradox. The FBI officially closed the active investigation in 2016. So after decades of work, thousands of suspects, and endless speculation, the case of D.B. Cooper stands all alone. A perfect crime, a complete disappearance. In the end, we're left with the exact same question they had back in 1971. Was he a brilliant folk hero who pulled off the impossible and escaped to a new life? Or was he a reckless criminal whose grand plan ended tragically in the dark forests of the Pacific Northwest? Who was the real D.B. Cooper? The answer, it seems, just disappeared with him into the night.